live. All right, what I want to talk about tonight is something that came up at a panel. I kind of vaguely mentioned it as I spoke to people in Birmingham, Alabama, and I mentioned Black Lives Matter, and for some reason, up until then, it wasn't really a topic that I discussed or spoke about. And as I spoke about it on the platform, it got me to thinking about what the real cause to all of it is. So I want to just kind of go over some thoughts that I had on the plane coming back from Atlanta earlier today. I'm just getting home. It's about 11 o'clock at night. And the whole idea of Black Lives Matter, there has to be a cause to the effect. To put value on something is important. But I think the most important thing is we can't expect them to value something that we in ourselves don't value. It is unreasonable to think that somebody would have value on something that we don't put value on ourselves. And when I say we don't value our own lives, some people will disagree with me when I say that. But if you value something, you'll invest in it. To have value is to put a high priority on something. And to put a high priority on something is to invest in it, is to cultivate it, is to mature it. So when I say we're not cultivating, maturing our lives, it means that we're not taking the time to educate ourselves. Education is the most important thing that we have. And the reason why we haven't valued our lives is because we haven't in ourselves placed value in our lives. We haven't invested in anything that would give us any other value than the value that was given to us through their school system. Think about it. Our lives are valued based on what type of education or what we've been taught. We go to a job, we get a resume, we put a resume together, and all that resume is a piece of paper telling them what we think we're worth, or based on what other companies have allowed us to work, or some of the things that we've accomplished, is saying that this is what we're worth. So based on your resume will be the basis of what you'll get paid. So if we're not doing anything to continue to add value to our lives, then what value do we have? So now I'm sitting here now as a 40-year-old talking to possibly people around my same age, and you're kind of looking at it one way, but I'm thinking about the youth. The youth have less to value because they don't understand the possibility of what their future is if they haven't been taught. And the only way they can be taught that is if we teach them. But the problem is, as an adult, we go to school, we get our degrees, and we stop learning at the very point immediately when we don't have to learn anymore. We learn just enough to get what we want as far as a job or some type of a skill or something like that. We learn just enough. We stop it immediately. As soon as there's no more requirements for us to learn, we stop. Am I right or am I right? So then, because we're not learning, because we don't have anything new and exciting to learn, or we haven't learned anything new and exciting, we start to fade into a bored, mundane life or fall into a rut. And what this rut does is causes us to repeat each day over and over and over and over and over. Now, if we start to repeat each day over and over and over, we lose our enthusiasm of life. We lose our creativity. We have no purpose to be creative We have no reason to be excited because we know what we're to expect the next day. We understand that, hey, if I made 100,000 this year, well, let's break it down. Most people don't make 100,000 a year. If I made 40,000 this year, that means I'm gonna make 40,000 next year. What is there to look forward to? What new thing is there to look forward to other than your paid vacation, if you get that? So now, again, we're looking at the cause to the effect. We can't change effects by changing effects. We can't change effects with effects. We have to get to the root of the problem. The problem is that if we don't have something to teach these children about life, because we haven't in ourselves invested in our lives, we haven't put value into our own selves, we can't put value in them. We can sit with a cigarette in our mouth telling our children not to smoke. But what are they going to do? They're going to do what they see. And when they see you go to work day in and day out, come home and complain about your circumstances, come home and complain about the lot that's been given to you, blaming everybody but yourself on where you at, they will lose hope. And they have nobody to blame. You have nobody to blame but yourself. Your job as a parent is to educate yourself at the highest level you could possibly educate yourself. And then from that education, find purpose in that and pass that gift, that vision down to your children. Your children should never have to deal with the day-to-day struggles of an adult as a child. All the complaining and the arguing and carrying on, for what? A child is supposed to be a child, but what we're doing is we're bringing our adult issues into their childhood, causing these children to grow up a lot faster than they should. Let the child remain a child and you deal with the issues. But you can't deal with them if you're not prepared to deal with them, if you don't put yourself in a position to deal with them. And the only way you're going to do that is by educating yourself. And when I say educate, I'm not talking about the school system. I'm not necessarily talking about college. I'm talking about growing as a person, as an individual, understanding how this whole thing called life really works. I was told a long time ago that if once a flower blossoms and it grows and it opens up, the very moment it stops blossoming, the very moment it's no longer growing, that very moment it starts to die. And it is the same with us. If we're not growing, we're dying. If we're not continually growing and doing things to add value to our lives, we are dying. They are not killing us. We are killing us. It's just a slow process. And it states it very simple and clear. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. It can't get any more plainer and simpler than that. We can't blame somebody else for putting us in a bad predicament when it's us that can control whether we're being put in that predicament or not. We can't blame society on what's going on outside of society when we haven't done our part within our own sphere of influence, which is our household, our families. The biggest thing that destroys our families is broken relationships. And the first broken relationship is between a man and a woman that has a child. And if that relationship is broken, then anything that happens from that is automatically going to have missing pieces. So a child that grows up without both parents is going to have missing pieces. And those pieces have to be filled in some kind of way. So that child is going to be looking for something to fill those empty voids. It's going to be looking for that affirmation of a man. It's going to be looking for that nurturing of a woman. It's going to be looking for different things in different places. And it's going to venture off and try to find those things that are missing. Anytime there's lack in something, it causes perversion. And our children are perverted in a sense that they're being ripped away from what the essence of being a child is, and they're seeking something that should be planted in them inside their household, outside of their household. It's not the guns, it's not the drugs, it's not the rap music. It's our lack of educating ourselves and lack of putting purpose in the lives of our children that's killing our children and possibly our generation. It's really that simple. We are blaming so many different things, but we're not looking at ourselves. We're again trying to change the cause with effects. Effects with effects, you can't do that. We have to come to grips with ourselves and understand that in order to save this generation, in order to save our possible race, we have to do something different. And that those differences are going to come from how we view this world that we live in. If we view this world as us being victims of the circumstances around us, then that's exactly what we'll be, victims. See, the world conforms to our idea of what the world is. Automatically, it cooperates with us in a sense of what we believe this world is for us. That's exactly what it'll be for us. It responds to our image of what we see. If we see this world's going to hell, then by golly gee, we'll be going to hell with it. But if we look at a world that has infinite amount of possibilities, opportunities, and filled with love, then guess what? Those are the things that we'll draw onto ourselves, and we'll be a part of that movement. A man that walks this earth without knowing his purpose is a dangerous man. He's a danger to himself, and he's a danger to all those he encounters, because that man will misuse himself and also abuse himself and also abuse others because he doesn't understand what his purpose or what his focus is. If I picked up these scissors right now, not knowing the purpose of these scissors, and started playing with them, just doing anything, I'm abusing the purpose of these scissors, and possibly I can hurt someone, cut my finger, cut the wrong thing, not understanding what these things are capable of. We're walking around not knowing what we're capable of, misusing and abusing ourselves, and as a result, we're abusing others. This is where you get domestic violence from. This is where you get black on black crime and all these other things, because we don't understand what power we have within us. And let me explain to you what the real power is. The power that has evolved us as a species, not just a race, but as a species, is our power and our ability to articulate our thoughts into words. What has caused us to raise our level of existence is our ability to articulate our thoughts into words. Those words have allowed us to gain what we call collective knowledge, meaning that every generation has the ability to go back generation prior to, and learn all the mistakes and all the things that we can possibly learn from the generation before and bring that into the next generation. We have the ability to go back, and we don't have an excuse now, because today with the internet, we have never been at any point in our existence more privy to information than we are now. If you have a question, Google takes pride in answering that question in the few amount of seconds possible. If you ever look at Google, you type it in and it says results in point something seconds. It takes pride in having the world's knowledge available to you at your fingertips in a moment of time. We don't have an excuse. Collective knowledge means that we don't have to make the same mistakes that our family, our generation prior to us made. And it's with that collective knowledge that we've been able to evolve as a species. It's with that collective knowledge that when we lived in the dark ages, being superstitious, being afraid to come out at night, being not knowing whether we was going to live because of some disease we didn't even know what it was. We used to call things blood poisoning. The reason why we celebrate birthdays today is because birthdays were something to celebrate because we did not know how long we had to live. It was an occasion to celebrate, to make it to another year. With all the different things that were going on in the dark ages, with going out in the wilderness, being mauled by animals, possibly all kinds of different things. You can get cut and have diseases, infections, and it's just, to live to 30 years old was an achievement in itself. Now we have people living to the hundreds. Being 100 is not a big deal anymore. But this is coming through collective knowledge. Now, we don't have those excuses to have those superstitions. We don't have the excuse to have all those limitations on us because now we know more than we've ever known. And the key to evolving ourselves as a race, the key to evolving ourselves is understanding the power that we do have, the ability to articulate our words. And it's all boils down to how we think. What we think, how we perceive the world that we're in. In order to gain power over yourself, you must first understand yourself. You don't own something until you understand it. I'll say it again. You don't own something until you understand it. You don't own yourself. The world owns you. Society owns you. Popular opinion owns you. The media owns you. The government owns you. Whoever owns you, because you don't understand yourself. You don't understand who you are. You don't understand the power that you have. And the power that you have is the one and only power that you can control in your life is your ability to think. Your mind is the greatest gift that you have. That's the one thing that you possess that's more valuable than anything. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. And when we cater to our mind, when we educate ourselves and we put ourselves in a position to evolve our minds, we'll draw onto ourselves things that can propel us out of our situation. If we took the time to work our minds out like we work our bodies, or train ourselves in a way that athletes train their bodies, our minds will have a bigger capacity to retain information and give out information to others as needed. So what I'm really saying to you is this right here, is that Black Lives Matter, absolutely. And the whole hashtag, it's a movement, but we can't talk about something and not really get to the core cause. There's no way that we can expect somebody else to respect our lives when we haven't done anything to add value to our own lives. We cruise through life with the 12th grade education, expecting that to get us through the remainder of our life without having to learn anything else, without opening up a book. Let me tell you something that changed my life. I used to own a barbershop, and in that barbershop, there was a flyer that was passed through. And on that flyer it said, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. I didn't like that. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it in so much that I was hurt because that flyer was specifically, if nobody else was talking about me. I didn't like to read. By the time I saw that flyer, I was maybe 2, maybe 3 years out of high school. Had no reason to read anything. Didn't like to read in school. Had no reason to study anything. So why would I read? Sports Illustrated, maybe. But for the most part, captions and pictures. Read the newspaper? For what? I took it personal. I took it very personal. The flip side to that flyer that was being circulated, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. Black men don't read. It talked about the other part of it, which was a very small portion of that flyer, was it talked about W.E.B. Du Bois, and it talked about the talented 10th. It talked about the 10% of the black community that somehow finds a way to elevate themselves past the limitations that are placed, past all the things that cause them to be in the situations that they're in. And it is their responsibility after they've elevated themselves to go back and teach and bring the 90% up. I was in no way qualified to be a part of that 10th. But the moment I decided to take the time and read 15 minutes every single day, that's where my journey began. I read 15 minutes every day no matter what. 15 minutes in the morning, and then eventually 15 minutes at night. Then eventually 15 minutes during my lunch break. Then eventually I'm eating lunch, reading a book every day. Eventually I'm sitting in the morning doing my business, reading a book every day. Then eventually I got to a point of reading 2 books every month, and I did it for 5 years. I don't know if there's any scholars out there, but I was told that that's equivalent of having a doctorate. To read 2 books every single month for 5 years is equivalent to having a doctor. Now, I don't claim to have a doctorate or anything like that, but I do know it changed my life. And as I put more into me, I was able to pour more out into other people. I was able to have the answer to the question at the time that the question needed to be answered. I was able to consult and counsel people that otherwise I would have been sitting there with a dumb look on my face because I don't know how to help them because I can't help myself. And that was my journey. And when you start to take that journey, when you start to educate yourself like that, you see the value in your life that it has to affect other people. You understand that your purpose is not to just live by yourself. Live on all to yourself. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes is by Dr. Einstein. They asked Einstein a fundamental question. What is the purpose of life? And Einstein, very few times he said, I don't know. I don't know what the purpose of life is. But what I do know is that it's not for us, but it is for somebody else. That's his words. Life is not for us, the individual, but it's for someone else. And as I was talking to my trainer earlier today, I told him, I said, my success is directly depending, my success is relative. My success is directly relative to the people that I affect. There's no way I could ever call myself self-made, no matter what. Because if I don't affect anybody else, I'm not successful. As a trainer, I told him, I said, your success lies in my ability to do what I do. Because if I'm not in shape and I can't push through, if I can't hit these engagements and do the things I have to do, then you failed as a trainer. But if I'm out there doing the things that I have to do because of my physical conditioning, then you are successful as a trainer, and your success is tied into my success. The more people I impact and they go on to be successful husbands, wives, businessmen, children, students, that is how I become successful. I can do 1,000 speeches and not affect anybody and have a bunch of accolades and write 1,000,000 books and consider myself successful. But if nobody lives have changed because of that, I've done nothing. And that's with any occupation that you can possibly think of. To be a doctor means nothing unless you're helping the sick. Bottom line. So at the end of the day, when we add value and purpose into our lives, then our lives start to matter. And that's what really matters. Black lives, they do matter. Black education matters as well. Because if we don't educate ourselves, and I'll say it very simple and plain, if we don't educate ourselves, we'll continue, as one of my favorite books says, continue to walk as sheep on the way to the slaughter. And it's a hard truth, but it's not the educated killing the educated. It's the ones that, and I would never say hopeless, because the minute you start talking about being hopeless, what you do is essentially slam the door in the face of God, as if he can't change the situation. But one thing I learned a long time ago is that your situation don't change until you change. And the thing that has to change is your mind. And in order to change your mind, you have to change the influences that you're around, the things that you read, and the people that you hang around. And so educating ourselves will automatically bring us out of the situations that we're in, because we'll no longer have the desire, the taste, the appetite for the things that we're around. Once you start learning something new, you're going to want to practice that new thing. And you can't practice it on your couch watching Oprah or watching whatever, the reality shows, whatever. You can't do it. You can't do it. You got to get out and do something. When I started learning, I needed a platform to get this out of me. When I started researching and studying, I needed somebody to talk to. And my environment changed because of that. Give our youth something to look forward to. Give our young men something to aim for. We're not stupid. We don't need drugs to keep us calm in school. All we need is somebody to believe in us, that sparks that ray of hope, that will cause that child, that man, that woman to believe in themselves, that they can do it, that they can come out of the situation at the end. Just a thought is so powerful. A thought has energy all by itself, has a power all by itself. And the thought that it could change. Not that it will, but it could change. The possibility that it can change is all you need. And if you have that possibility, that thought of a possibility that change can come, then guess what? If you expect those things will come to you. I'm T.W. Dawson, and my mission is to unleash the potential power within you by adding the super to your natural, the extra to your ordinary, and the above to your average through education, motivation, and inspiration. I'm signing out.